Welcome back. I'm Peter St. Onge. This is a weekly roundup of my daily videos on the economy and freedom, where I cut through the BS and lay out what the gaslighting clowns pulled out of their hats this week and what is coming next. Oil prices are in free fall and could keep going to $40 a barrel, which implies $2 gasoline. Maybe we should close the Hormuz more often. With the war in Iran petering out, oil prices are crashing almost as fast as they rose, going from $105 a barrel 6 weeks ago to just over $70 on West Texas crude. That's barely above the $67 when the war started. And prediction market Kalshi is now projecting $60 oil by the end of the year, $7 below when the war started. More important, apparently the war has torn apart OPEC, with major members threatening to leave. One already has, which matters because OPEC breaking could take oil down into the 40s. So OPEC started in the 1960s explicitly to keep oil prices high by cartelizing production, meaning they intentionally pump less oil to create shortages that keep prices high. Like any cartel, this is tricky since every country wants to cheat and pump extra, and Saudi Arabia was the enforcer. The problem is it ain't the 1960s anymore in two big ways. Oil production in non-OPEC countries soared, and while OPEC members never liked each other very much, they like each other a lot less after 4 months bombing each other. So when OPEC started, it was roughly 80% of world oil exports. Before the Iran war, that had fallen to just over half. And since the war, production jumped by millions of barrels in the U.S., Canada, Brazil, Kazakhstan, meaning OPEC is now well below half. That's a problem because it means going forward, when OPEC cuts production, it's not strangling the world, it's simply handing the money to Americans, Canadians, Russians, and Kazakhstanis. And that brings us to the political problem, the way Saudi behaved during the war, and now that the war is over. In short, Saudi has a pipeline to the Red Sea, which goes around the Strait of Hormuz that Iran keeps bombing, meaning they could get a lot of oil, roughly half, and keep making money. But members like Kuwait, Iraq, and Bahrain are all trapped in the Gulf at the mercy of Iran. They could not sell anything. This left billion-dollar holes in their budgets. Now that the war is over, they want Saudi to give them extra quota to make up for it. So Iraq wants a 50% hike. Meanwhile, one of the biggest surprises of the war is China slashed oil demand, probably because a lot of factories are working on razor-thin margins, so it was cheaper to just shut down. Now, Saudi's afraid that could be permanent, meaning they'd be letting OPEC pump hard into a dead market, which would crash oil prices. In short, non-OPEC production and Chinese demand are creating an oil glut. Toss in 50% quota hikes, and that glut becomes an ocean. So what's next? When the smoke clears on Iran, the most important consequence could be the 60-year U.S. objective of breaking OPEC. In April, OPEC's second biggest producer, the UAE, announced it's leaving. Iraq and Kuwait could go next, and every member who does leave raises the cost of staying as even more countries drink OPEC's milkshake. As for the rest of us, the end of OPEC would transfer trillions per year from Middle East dictators to largely Western consumers, and it would be one more reason America can happily walk away from a dysfunctional Middle East. The NBA has peaked and recruiters are blaming artificial intelligence. Are the days numbered, paying 25-year-olds six figures to put covers on the TPS reports? A new study by GMAC, the main business school association, surveyed 600 corporate recruiters and found MBA starting salaries are crashing down $5,000 in a single year, closer to $10,000 with inflation. That leaves real MBA salaries $20,000 below where they were 20 years ago. In fact, inflation-adjusted MBAs are lower than 1980. Masters in finance are falling even harder, down $10,000 last year to a piddling $82,000, less than a guy who installs tiles. Worse, since AI came out, salaries are sliding even at the top schools. Take Wharton, long a ticket to the elite. Between 1990 and the year before ChatGPT, Wharton's starting salaries were growing 3 times faster than the rest of the economy. But since ChatGPT, annual wage growth across the economy doubled, while Wharton is down nearly 20 grand. So blue collars are ruling, the Wharton bros are drooling. What's causing it? GMAC recruiters overwhelmingly blame AI, which is wiping out the entry-level analyst jobs in consulting and finance that are the first rungs on the MBA career ladder. Now, in recent videos, I've been talking about the emerging pattern in AI where its overall impact on jobs is neutral to positive, as in AI is creating jobs, but AI is gutting the credential premium, the extra salary you get for a useless degree. Harvard psych majors making six figures working procurement at airplane parts makers where the degree itself is useless. The job just needed a generalist with a decent IQ. The problem being, AI is a generalist with a decent IQ for many activities, and it's 10 times cheaper than a psych major. Now, this is catastrophic for universities who grew fat, like $1 trillion fat, selling $150,000 IQ tests. It's brutal for the millions of young Americans who sold themselves into debt slavery for those 150,000 IQ tests. Some will pivot, perhaps getting a nursing degree or learning to weld. Others will take whatever service job they can get at Starbucks or DoorDash and write manifestos how capitalism is broken. When the smoke clears, we'll see a dramatic shift in economic and political power between the blue-collar losers of the past half-century and the credentialed elite, who, going by recent democratic socialist victories in blue cities, are rapidly shifting from parasite to revolutionary. So as next, universities have spent generations now monetizing the economic hierarchy, charging $150,000 to graduate people who don't have any concrete skills. AI is now showing the emperors have no clothes, that expensive sheepskins with no real-world skills are about as valuable as the paper they're printed on. As for how to play it, if you are raising kids, the key is this is not the world you grew up in, where a degree in psychology or art history from Dartmouth is the easy button to life. In the coming economy, you need actual concrete skills. Healthcare, engineering, sales management, the skilled trades, or, of course, entrepreneurship, which AI makes 10 times easier than any generation in history. As for the millions of overeducated debt slaves who cannot or will not adapt, they'll be handing half their Starbucks paycheck to Harvard for life. A word from our sponsor. If you own gold, and many of you do, you already understand how it protects your wealth from the insanity coming out of Washington. The inflation, the recessions, the wars. But with monetary metals, there's a way to actually earn a yield of up to 4% on your gold paid in more ounces of gold. You retain ownership of real, allocated physical gold with no storage costs while your ounces grow every month outside the banking system. If you're serious about protecting your future and building your legacy, head to monetarymetals.com/Peter to get started. One of the best ways to secure your Bitcoin is with a hardware wallet, a physical device that lets you keep your coins offline without internet connection. One of the most trusted names in hardware wallets is CoinKite, maker of the famous block clock. CoinKite devices are made in Canada and they're run by passionate Bitcoiners who've been at this since 2012, back when Bitcoiners were trading in person at swap meets. You can pick up hardware wallets and plenty of other goodies at coinkite.com/ProfSaintAnge. That's CoinKite.com/ProfSaintAnge. Okay, back to our show. A series of pro-Trump Supreme Court decisions are reviving Democrat efforts to pack the Supreme Court, which would effectively gut the court's ability to strike down laws, turning it into a congressional rubber stamp. Joe Biden's handlers proposed just firing the conservatives, keep it simple. Kamala suggested expanding the Supreme Court to swamp them. Nancy Pelosi's progressive replacement, who will run the House come November, says, quote, everything's on the table on court packing. Now, this is all interesting for a couple reasons. First, because fear of court packing is a major reason why Republicans keep the filibuster that ties their hands behind their back on existential issues like election security, in the forlorn hope that Democrats will politely reciprocate when they are already promising to gut the court, which would require ditching that same filibuster. But more important, if we walk through the consequences of gutting the Supremes, there are a couple of very interesting silver linings. For starters, if the Supreme Court cannot declare laws invalid, neither can progressive Obama judges. You gut the entire left-captured judicial coup that is currently blocking voters. More important, if the Supremes are gone, you revert to the system the Constitution actually intended, where states decide what is constitutional, nullifying anything they disagree with. So Californians get their abortion on demand, South Dakota, life begins at conception, New York gets a wealth tax, but Nevadans, whose constitution forbids any income tax, stop paying a penny to the IRS. If this all sounds far-fetched, consider states already regularly ignore federal law, from sanctuary cities to marijuana legalization, and nothing happens, because there is no mechanism for the Supremes to force obedience. It is an illusion, as Andrew Jackson allegedly remarked when he disobeyed the court on Cherokee removal. Quote, Judge Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. So the background here is the Constitution actually does not give the Supreme Court the power to strike down federal laws, called judicial review. The court pulled it out of their butt in a 1803 judicial coup called Marbury v. Madison, which you'll probably recall from the 8th grade. Before that, individual states decided what was legal according to their own constitutions that are often more based than the federal version. So you had the famous Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, which nullified the Alien Sedition Acts, the Hartford Convention that nullified federal trade policy. Northern states nullified the Fugitive Slave Act. So if the Democrats pack the court, we revert to the good old days where you can effectively choose between 50 different countries. I, for one, would love to live in a state that nullifies the income tax, Federal Reserve, birthright citizenship, and grants to leering centers. And it would go miles to reducing the simmering civil war if godless communists can live in their pronoun utopias and the rest of us can ignore them. Could even imagine a day when the average American doesn't particularly care who is president or who's in Congress, since they don't actually do anything. They simply suggest things your state may or may not adopt. So as next, the Supreme Court built a federal leviathan that seizes state sovereignty and vetoes voters on a legal illusion. Democrats are chomping at the bit to gut the illusion. Republicans are dancing like marionettes to preserve it. Maybe it's time to let it go. A majority of Gen Z now wants to replace our economic system with socialism, not because they enjoy starving in gulags, but because public schools are run by NPR interns with glitter glue, while the Federal Reserve and Congress work overtime to ensure crony capitalism guts the young. According to a new study by Cato, over half of 18 to 25-year-olds, 53%, have a favorable view of socialism, which beats capitalism that scores just 45. Meanwhile, 38%, 4 in 10, have a favorable view of communism. So communism is now just 7 points behind capitalism. Impressive approval for breadlines, secret police, and gulags. Worse, the trend is getting bad fast. Seniors favor capitalism 3-1 to socialism and 13-1 to communism. Even millennials, capitalism beats socialism by 10. So Gen Z is a 18-point swing compared to avocado toast pronouncing millennials. Now, it's tempting to say Gen Z is just uniquely stupid, but that's not quite true. They had a lot of help from teachers and professors. 12 years of government school, followed by 4 years of progressive finishing school to marinate them in capitalism for 16 of their first 22 years. 84% of public school teachers and 93% of college professors are liberal, meaning socialist. In one study, donations ran 95-1 Democrat. Another study sampled 118 professors who donate to politics, found 1 out of 118 donate exclusively to Republicans, and 0 donated to Trump. Teachers' unions are even more extreme. At this point, they are the Democrat base, supplying the foot soldiers and in-kind donations to swing elections, while enthusiastically pushing DEI, woke politics, and communist economics to the next generation, at least the 84% of them who they've captured from their overwhelmingly conservative parents. In other words, liberals do not have kids, but they just take yours. Recent study found 1 in 3 high school Gen Z do not know who George Washington is. 61% had no idea what we were just celebrating the 250th anniversary of. 11% guessed the first election. 4% guessed the Plymouth Brock, 30% did not comprehend the question. But schools are only half the story. The other half is Congress and the Fed made capitalism look like a rigged casino where boomers own the chips and young people valet park the Lamborghinis, raining cheap money upon Wall Street and corporations and leaving the inflation for the little guy. This pumped home prices vertical to the point the average first-time homebuyer is 40. Groceries went vertical to the point 4 in 10 Gen Z buy now, pay later users are buying groceries. Now, given young people don't have any assets to pump, but they do eat, they got none of the juice, but all the squeeze. Meaning Gen Z does not love communism for the gulags and breadlines. They love it because they've been sold a bill of goods, and their communist professors connect the dots to a revolution that will finish them off. Now, the fix to education is simple. Return K-12 to parents and government grants and student loans to universities beyond apolitical, medical engineering, and basic research, and restore an economy where nobody is coming to stop you or bail you out. So slash red tape, slash tax rates, make it as easy to start a company or create a job as ordering an Uber, and in return, end the bailouts. So as next, young people are hungry for challenge, hungry for success, and discouraged when they're up against roadblocks while the connected pick their pockets and slam their doors. We don't fix it. We are replacing the Cold War generation who understands communism with an entire electorate who'll need to learn about breadlines and gulags first person. A word from our sponsor. Stocks and even gold are all over the place. If you're ready to diversify, Abundant Minds makes Bitcoin mining simple, transparent, and human. You can deduct every penny thanks to Trump's big beautiful bill. It's a 401k for Bitcoin mining. Founded by husband-wife team Bo and Christine Marie Turner after losing $500,000 to broken promises in the mining industry, Abundant Minds was built to protect investors. You own the machines, and they make it turnkey with hosting in their facilities in Oregon. Pricing is clear with one flat monthly fee and no surprises, and they guarantee uptime so you keep earning day in, day out. If you want easy diversification without pressure, learn more at abundantminds.com/Peter to get some of your first Bitcoin mined for free as a gift to my audience. The biggest risk in Bitcoin isn't volatility, it is custody. Because Bitcoin removes the safety net, there is no bank to call, no reset button if something goes wrong. The reality is, most people are not properly set up. They hold Bitcoin but rely on exchanges, incomplete wallet setups, and have no real plan for privacy or inheritance. This is exactly what the Bitcoin way solves. They help you move from exposure to actual ownership, self-custody done right, privacy, inheritance, even running your own node, all set up with you step by step. They never touch your Bitcoin. They're your support team. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Peter to book a free call and go from where you are today to a much stronger setup. Now back to our show. The Trump accounts are coming for the grown-ups as Donald Trump floats turning Social Security from an IOU from Congress into real assets you own. Which matters because Social Security is going bankrupt with trustees saying we've got just 6 years until benefits are cut by 20 to 25%. Because Congress pissed away every dollar on Somali leering centers and other people's wars, leaving Social Security the mother of Ponzi's with an estimated $29 trillion of unfunded liabilities. Keep in mind that is on top of the national debt. Moreover, while Democrats' solutions naturally are tax hikes and cutting off the wealthy people who paid most Social Security taxes, Trump wants to shift it towards the 401k and IRA models where you actually invest the money and keep the proceeds. A model that has generated nearly $30 trillion of assets in IRAs and 401ks, compared to $29 trillion of debt in Social Security. Now, the details are still coming since Trump accounts for kids were just launched, which seed $1,000 into essentially an IRA for kiddos, to which you can contribute another $5,000 a year. Now, that may not sound like much, but if you had done that for today's 18-year-old, they would have $409,000. Not a bad way to start out. In fact, it's enough to buy a house with cash to start a family. More important, it gives kids a stake in the free market system Democrat socialists are currently trying to replace with breadlines. Trump wants to do something similar for the grown-ups, modeled on Australia's superannuation system, where Social Security taxes go into an account you own and invest, like IRAs and 401ks. The idea is it would work like Social Security, but instead of taking your money for Congress to piss away, the money would go into your own account. Now, in Australia, that system is built up over 4 trillion Australian, so in U.S. terms, about $45 trillion in assets. Translated per American household, that would be about $350,000 in assets instead of $200,000 of Social Security debt. Now, the devil is in the details, first because Trump needs Congress, who enjoys blowing your Social Security on leering centers and wars, especially Democrats who fought private accounts for decades, since apparently they do not want the workers to own the means of production. Second, because the existing $29 trillion hole in Social Security means Congress would have a huge hole, which they would have to fill by slashing spending for a couple decades. Now, this is certainly painful for Washington's drunkest sailors, but keep in mind, if we don't change anything, that $29 trillion hole becomes a $72 trillion hole. So it's next. For 90 years, Congress raided Social Security, leaving it with IOUs that are about to run out. Shifting to an IRA-type system would turn Social Security from a black hole into a very respectable retirement, and it gives young people a stake in the system that keeps us all from starving. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and go to petersanons.com for daily videos and in-depth articles with charts and all the gory details. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.